Okay.
Okay. It's okay. Like I said, it literally will take a second to render it all up and running. So.
All right. Are we ready?
All right. I think we should be live.
Okay. I'll call the meeting to order subject to section 1983 Wisconsin state statutes. We'll roll call in here. Steve?
Here.
Tanya?
Here.
Vicky?
Here.
Pat?
Here.
And I am here as well. First item here, the next item here is to suspend Robert's rules of order.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? And that carries. Item 4 is to discuss and review community survey results from school perceptions.
All right. Well, good evening. And I just wanted to thank everybody for being able to pull this together. We do have individuals from our Director of Finance from the district office, Renee Peterson. We have Mike Hoika with facilities. Beth Linderholm and Andrea Herzon are here as well, representing the district office. And then we have from TeamWorks, we're being joined by Christine. As you know, at the last board meeting, we had the sharing of the community-wide survey through school perceptions. And we wanted to be able to have and use our work session that allows us to go into more detail and deeper into a subject prior to our December 16th work session. As you know, no formal decisions are made during a work session. It's an opportunity for us to dialogue and provide direction, as well as for the board to kind of direct me and the district administration to pull additional information for you so that we can ensure that you have the information you need to make the tough decisions. Tonight, what we've laid out is that there are 6 sections to tonight's meeting. I want to just walk through the 6 sections and then we'll go through each in turn. The first, obviously, is we want a springboard of kind of digesting and having opportunity to kind of look at the slides from Sue Peterson, is to kind of digest what we learned from the community-wide survey. Second, we wanted to come back to kind of the principles of the role and function of the school board and administration as it engages in consultation with our community. We've asked Christine from TeamWorks to kind of help us move from the informal to the formal with regards to a guiding change document. Every time we've worked with a guiding change document, we've been more successful in kind of following our roadmap. So we wanted to follow up from the April 2020 work session where we kind of informally laid out some plans, but to really have something for next board meeting. Sections 3 and 6 go together. They're tied together. We're going to start with, and it's highlighted here on the screen with regards to kind of the purpose and expectations for tonight. And obviously, we did ask our community to look at our urgent and near-term needs based on a study by SDS and Mike Hoika's 10-year plans. We asked them to also look at our academic and instructional areas. And so we have that information, and I think we have the responsibility to look at that information and respond to 3 questions. And there might be a 4th, so I just wanted to kind of lay the groundwork, and obviously when we come to section 3, we can expand. But it would be, do we delay and defer for another period of time? Do we look at what would be referred to as more urgent needs, and in a 2-part ask, and then look at the near term for a later period of time after April 2021. The 3rd would be that we're all in. We asked on our survey for people to identify tax tolerance at $16 to $22 million. We have the results, and the question is, are we going to listen to those results and go forward? And there might be a 4th option, and we can kind of discuss that at the time. Number 3 is then really predicated on background knowledge. Sorry? Okay. Number 4 and 5 are really just the background information. And so I'm going to ask Renee and myself to kind of walk you through timelines that are related to when you are allowed to ask for voters to support and invest in your academic school district. Then we have information from Mike Koika with regards to all the spreadsheets that we've been looking at. And remember, this goes back to August of 2019. So this is kind of beyond a year and 18 months or 18 months process. And then we'll go back to an action plan based on number 3 and understanding kind of timelines and the information would be kind of what, if any, decision is the board leaning to? What information or way would you like it brought up so that there could be dialogue and a decision made at a board meeting versus the work session? So that's kind of the 6 areas. Is there any clarification or comment before we kind of dive in? And Mike and I were going to take number 1 and get input, and then Christine will take number 2.
Yeah, and I would just encourage anybody that has any questions. This is a workshop, so I mean, we should be able to ask questions along the way here. So keep the dialogue open and ask questions when you have them.
All right. Overall, as you can imagine, I think that my takeaway as we looked at the slides that were number 20 and 32, which was overall where people were in the district community-wide with regards to supporting a referendum prior to even having information about the pathways and also the amount. There was a large component that we had not connected with at this point with our information. I think our community told us that it's not ready to make that significant a financial investment to support the infrastructure and learning environments. The learning environments kind of led to the pathways 1 and 2. So we have to kind of remember surveys are for gathering information. It's not necessarily a referendum, but I think it was pretty clear that the level at which we were initially asking, the community is not ready yet. I think that in the context of we did this work and it started pre-pandemic, and obviously the pandemic does limit us as we are tonight meeting virtually. A lot of the community involvement or parent involvement typically was using technology and Zoom meetings. The tax tolerance, obviously, there's not a full buy-in yet. And I think our job and our roles probably will require more clarity and maybe, if you will, a longer runway to be able to engage our community in different ways to ensure that there's full participation and engagement of our community about needs. And to clarify that it's not needs and wants, but they're kind of needs around the values and also priorities the board has. And that's kind of where it segues into the guiding change. Any other kind of major takeaways or thoughts from those 3, I think, key pieces?
I'm just opening up here. If anybody has any comments or any questions on anything from the presentation.
I don't have any questions.
Rick, one thing I know, part of the survey that we haven't seen is a lot of the comments. Is that something that you can either share with us or kind of summarize with us in a way that, that it doesn't take 20 minutes, but, just kind of give us some of the highlights, some of the lowlights of what some of those comments were? We didn't really dive into that a whole lot.
Yeah, that's a good question. It recently came, School Perceptions did kind of put that together. I'll share that with you. And I think we have one task that we're going to charge all of you to help us and get some information back with regards to the guiding change. I think there were a couple things. Timing was big. I think with regards to just during the pandemic, the question was, we wish we had a little bit more information or could learn a little bit more about the difference between need and wants. And I think that we ended the meeting kind of sharing that both of these were tethered together, that the infrastructure is a need. A roof, is essential. The roof is leaking, it's beyond its age. And we were pretty diligent in that for the last 2 years of presenting that information. I think the additional piece about safety and security. Overall, there were some good news is that the community thought our buildings are safe and secure. I think from a staff perspective or front administrative teams, having the offices in the middle of the buildings are what causes them concern and questions. The other one is just the high school. I think there's still some lagging questions about needing to differentiate that the vote and the opening of the high school wasn't a magic wand to remove the burden of generational investments into infrastructure of windows, HVAC, and roofs. And I think that kind of was enmeshed in the ask. So they kind of thought, we just invested a large amount of money in 2014, 2015 for the new high school. Why are you asking again? And I think we have 3 buildings that still require those generational investments. So I think that came out as less clear than we were intending or hoping to hit.
If I can
Okay.
add, it's
Yeah.
Christine here. One of the wonderful things about having a community survey and looking into some of those comments, it does give you a sense of how you need to inform your community moving forward. So what are the areas where you can, anticipate what the questions are and really make sure that your community fully understands the need and the background. And we've all talked about this before. We're always thanking our communities for whatever they've invested in our schools over and over again, and being transparent with how the money was spent. And so that's one of the best things you can do, is reflect back on how you did use the money, how their investment was used, and then how you're going to use their investment moving forward.
Thank you. Do we want to transition, and I'll stop sharing the screen, and I think then it gives you a time, Christine, to kind of pull up the document. And I think there's kind of 2 parts to this, is just kind of a reminder of kind of role and function. And then we're going to ask 3 very specific questions and feedback that we would like to have back to Mike and myself by December 14th, so that we can have it ready and staged for acceptance and discussion at our regular board meeting.
All right, so I'm just going to quickly show you the guiding change document, and we will dig into this just a little more deeply, not too deeply, because you do have a limited time tonight. But I am going to show you from your ELS guide, and there is a link from your agenda packet. This is a reminder to the board, and I think all the board members have gotten some kind of education leadership system development. Some of you may be deeper than others, but I just wanted to remind you about some of the work that we did a couple of years ago. For the newer board members, I know we spent some time walking through them, especially page 2. So as we think about the roles of the board, this is where the tough decision making always comes in. No matter what decision you make, not everyone's going to be happy. And you have the burden of leadership. And as you look at the education leadership system on page 2, it's really around the roles of the adults in the system. And you as the board, of course, understand your roles are around governance, oversight, leadership, policy making. But you, along with the superintendent and the district administrators and school principals, all must make all your decisions based on district interest. Every time, every decision you make, your role is to stay above that dotted line and always be thinking about the district interests. Even though many of you have kids in the school system or have had kids in the system, you try to take off that hat and think, what is in the district's best interest? The other adults involved in the system are around that mission delivery point, which is based on that interaction between the student, the family, and the teacher, which we've actually transitioned to calling the desired daily experience now. You'll get more of those in the future, but has to do with the other adults in the system. So you have the people who are in the schools and the programs. So the staff, the teachers, the aides, all the others in your schools and programs that are supporting students on a daily basis. Your parents, of course, and then the rest of the public. And I know that's part of the conversation tonight. they are operating in self-interest, and they should be operating in self-interest. And so that's what I just want to remind you of as you make your decisions tonight and moving forward, is the public is making a decision based on their tax tolerance, what they can do. And some of the members of the public are going to be making decision understanding that investment in schools maybe will be good for their property taxes in the future. Your parents, you're hoping, are making a decision based on their kids that they are responsible for right now in distance learning, probably trying to do their own jobs and teach their kids at the same time. But it's those parents, they're taking an interest in their family. And then the same thing for your teachers in the school building. You want them to be paying attention to the kids in the classroom or the Zoom room or whichever room they're in right now, but they are operating in that kind of self-interest where you want them focused on the kids, their own children, or the public, you know, their own homes and what that does for them. They do not have to think, act, make decisions in the district's interest unless you ask them to be involved in a district committee or task force. So for example, if you had a committee that was recommending anything related to facilities or budget or referendum or bond, they would be coming with their interest from wherever they are in the organization. But when they make any recommendation to you as a board, they need to go over that line and make that recommendation based on the district's best interest. So this is just a reminder of the difficult job that you're in, having to always make your decisions based on the district's best interest, which of course you have a lot more information than the rest of the public as you make decisions around investing in facilities, which is a lot of money. And how you best do that, unfortunately, is up to you, but you have your superintendent to guide you and people like Mike Hoyka and Renee to help you with that as well. So I wanted to start there and then go into the guiding change document. Rick, do you want me to do the guiding change document? I do have it up here. And you are muted.
There we go. So just wanted to make sure that we were going to really ask for tonight is just to kind of the frame. It really does emulate an extension from April 2020. The biggest piece we want to make sure is myself and the administrative team invest our time marshaling to kind of the direction or the focus question that you provide. So it is important that the question that we're trying to answer is accurate. Otherwise, there's a mismatch between expectations. So we just wanted to kind of revisit the focus question that we have been talking about, gathering information, prioritizing. If you go back to kind of asking, are we a 4-building district or 3? We kind of made the decision we're 4. We asked the community which way to use our 4 buildings and facilities and at what cost are they willing to help support that. We're going to go through kind of the current reality and then focus more on A in the desired results and see also if they're in the right area or level.
Okay, and just as a reminder, so the guiding change document is one of the documents that many school districts, and I think Tanya is very familiar with these, many school districts use when you're making any major decisions, especially when they're decisions that are going to involve your community or participation of your community. In this case, you're actually anticipating potentially putting the decision in the community's hands. If you're going to ask them to vote on a bond or referendum, you're actually then saying it's up to you when they ultimately make that decision. But for now, a guiding change document provides parameters for the change and how it gets conducted. So for you as a board, it's working, yes, in partnership with the superintendent and the administrative team, but you are laying out the parameters for how best to invest in your facilities for the long term. And having worked with you for a few years now, you have been talking about what is the best way to invest in facilities, understanding that it's your community that's making this investment and you're making those decisions. So the guiding change document acts as a great way to communicate why you're making this change, what you're hoping to achieve with it, and what you are not going to accept, those not hows, in order to get there. And so we always start with that focus question that Rick was talking about. The guiding change document is often used as a first step in any decision-making process. And as you recall, we did this when we did your teacher pay process. We started with a guiding change document as well. And you can use this anytime when you want to provide some of those parameters for and with your administrative team. We have some school districts that do it every budget cycle, in fact. So this is what we're offering to you. This is, again, based on all the information, your conversations last April, and a lot of the work that you've been doing, the discussions you've already been having as a board in anticipation of what decisions you're going to make. So we want to know, is this the right question for you? How do we responsibly plan for an investment in maintaining and improving our facilities for a more safe, academically productive, and engaging environment for our students? And as Rick mentioned, again, this is primarily based on that conversation you had in April at your work session. And if any of you have any questions, suggestions, or, and I'm going to defer to Mike on this, do you have any outstanding questions, concerns regarding the focus question? Is this the right question that you should be asking as you think about how to invest, not just making a decision about a referendum or a bond now or later, but about that investment in your facilities for the long term?
Yeah, so I know this is new for us. You know, this not the guiding change principle itself, but just, you know, this is going to be the first time we actually talk about this as a board in this focus question. But just off the top of anybody's head, does anybody have any comments on the focus question, or any suggestions? Do you think we're heading down the right path, or are we off the mark? Steve, maybe I'll just ping you and just get your initial thoughts here.
Well, I just think there's a lot of ambiguity with the word improving.
Do you have a suggestion, Steve?
Well, no, but it just sounds like you want to spend 14 million on a bunch of stuff that the community doesn't want to pay for. And I'm being kind of pointed with this comment only because I don't think we need ambiguity at this point. I think we need to be pretty focused on what it is we're going to be asking for. And if it's maintenance of facility needs that we have today and we can see in the next few years, whatever the case may be, or the long-term plan, that's fine. But what are we improving? Is that additions? Is that changing grades? I just don't like the word being in there.
Okay. So I think Rick is taking note of that.
I'm just, and that's just my point of view. If we really want to maintain and take care of the facilities like we need to get rid of all the rest of the junk.
Okay.
And again, just my opinion. Academically prepared, yeah. The rest of it, makes sense. I just think we need to be real clear on what we're asking for.
Steve, are you, and I just want to understand, are you thinking short term, or the intent here was to think about facilities and the facilities needs for the next several years and follow up on the conversation that you all have been having about how do you improve the overall academic experience, and that the buildings need to adjust in order to be able to deliver on that academic experience? So I think this was trying to be inclusive of that and saying this isn't just perhaps about next year, but up to the next 5 years or so.
No, and it could be the 10-year plan for all I care. But my point being, and you just said it exactly, you talk about a learning environment and keeping up with whatever. That's not facilities. That's a completely different conversation as far as I'm concerned. And I think the community's expressed that. We need to be clear in what we're asking. If we want a roof, we need to ask for a roof. We don't need to ask for a roof and IT components.
Okay. So,
and I don't know how you clearly state that, but that, I guess as long as you understand my point, we can figure it out.
Yeah, and I think actually, Christine and Mike, I think, and Steve, I think this is what arcs between the context and the reality, and then the desired results. I think the focus question is supposed to be more longer view, and then obviously we have to kind of chunk those out as we make the ability to kind of make progressive tick off basically the checklist of the improvements in exactly the clarity that we're trying to achieve. I think one of the things that we were going to ask is just to look for suggestions or major omissions with regards to the context and reality on the left-hand side, but it kind of goes through where our facilities are and the steps that you've taken as a board to have Mike give you every 6 months an update on our facilities and the costs, but also commissioning SDS to kind of look at our facilities. So I think you've vetted that and have that audit really well in place. I think then we went to our desired results. And so one of the things that we did informally, but we're asking to kind of formally address this on December 16th, is you would have rank ordered kind of the things that you wanted us to focus on. And so what we wanted to do is just lay that out. And I think on the financial investments kind of now, near term and long term. So in essence, what we were talking about is was just to make sure that we met the essential maintenance, such as the roof replacement, that I think we have more than enough information on. I think when you get to B, C, and D, that's where we wanted to start kind of the dialogue of, this is at least from the April 2020 documents and summary, kind of the order I believe that we left that meeting in, and the work that administration, Renee and Mike and I have kind of pursued. So if you kind of examine those 4 bullets, do they still seem to be in the right order with regards to how we would be progressing and making decisions for the investment based on decisions that you've said are part of your strategic plan?
So,
We just talked about, we've got to get that statement correct before we can answer these questions, right? We need to determine what the focus question is.
yeah,
And
I hear what
looking
you're
at
saying.
deferred results doesn't help us do that. I mean, we should determine desired results from the focus question, if I understand this correctly.
So can we, I got a word for you. How about transform instead of improve, which you said
Okay.
one of the things that the community that we got back was that thinking that the high school is done and they feel like then everything else is okay. But what they need to then, maybe what we need to get out there is that those buildings are now being used for purposes that they weren't originally intended. So it's not necessarily improving them, it's transforming them into the school that we need it to be now versus what it was originally built for.
And can I add, I'm just wondering if we want to take the adjectives out. So do we need the word improving, transforming, investing? I mean, like whatever it is. And can we just maybe leave like investment in maintaining our facilities for more safe? And then I feel like, Rick, to kind of go into what you're talking about, that's where we can put some of those adjectives in our desired results, right? Like, what do we want to maintain or need to maintain? What do we want to work on improving or transforming, whatever that adjective we go with it is. But I feel like that focus question doesn't need to have any implied meaning. It just needs to be, what are we going to do to maintain our buildings? And then the rest of this is going to help us define the difference between maintaining, transforming, and improving, all of the rest of it. So me personally, I would separate that into those adjective type words into the desired results, and that's our conversation.
And so Tanya, just to clarify, then you could actually say plan for an investment in our facilities for a more safe, and then leave the rest to the desired results.
Yes, let me see. How do we responsibly plan for investment in our facilities? Yeah, I mean, I would probably just leave it at that. I mean,
And
I don't know that we've decided that it's a less productive and engaging environment. I mean, I get that there's opinion, I get the educational research, I mean, I understand that, but I'm not sure that that's a decided or a reality that we all agree with right now.
Just going to put that there for now. Rick, did you have a comment on that?
Yes, I think it's a nice kind of middle ground with regards to, I think Vicky's comment for the first time kind of resonates for me with regards to that we have buildings, but they need to be transformed into the buildings that we currently need based on what we're doing. And I think the A through D were both the rank ordering that came out of April 2020, but also aligned with your strategic direction, right? So you have 5 areas of the strategic direction, of which making sure that we invest in the learning environment so it matches our academic model. So I think that those are the things, and it goes back to clarity and connecting with both our teachers first, and as they implement that, then our parents, and then obviously telling the good stories that are occurring, similar to just our Fab Lab conversation that happened with the Chamber of Commerce today. Obviously, a Fab Lab did not exist in 1970, and we're going after that to kind of extend our STEM program, but our facility wouldn't necessarily be designed to do that. But if that's part of how we currently deliver curriculum, I think that's where we need to put that into the desired result.
Well, here's a question for you though. Our focus question, and Tanya, I agree with the adjectives being taken out. That's a great idea. But our item A under A, conduct essential maintenance, maintenance is no longer in our focus question. Safety, academics, and engaging environment. Now maintenance is totally gone. So
But
where are our priorities?
Your investment in facilities.
Well,
Yeah.
but the word maintenance is critical because that's what we're asking for. We're asking for roofs. We're asking for windows. We're not asking for labs. At least that's in a priority order. We're not. So the word maintenance has got to be there somewhere.
I think it feels like this is a two-pronged ask, or I guess a guiding change document for two things. To your point, Steve, we're looking at maintenance, we're looking at essential stuff. What do we need? And then it's also including stuff to help us get to the point where we want to transform and increase our academic productivity in engaging environment. So if that's the direction for the guiding change document, we want to solve the long term, or we want something to guide us for the long term, but it also has to have that short term goal as well in the desired results. I think the focus question needs to be very simple and something that can be understood by the public. If we get this, if this goes out to the public, having something, over wordy and it just confuses people. So
it sounds like there is some agreement, and I don't think we've heard from Pat, that maintaining the facilities and somehow transforming or improving, not selected a word, but those are the two elements that it sounds like from the board members we've heard from need to be included in this guiding change document. Whether they're included in the focus question or not is what we're trying to decide here. But based on what Steve said, you like the idea of adding some of those adjectives into the desired results, but also ensuring that you have maintaining as part of the investment. Because what you're asking them to do, whatever you do, it's an investment in your facilities, whether you're doing maintenance or going beyond kind of maintenance and transforming the facilities to meet your academic model. So for the rest of the board, do you have a sense? Do you want to keep it extremely simple in the focus question, or add that two-pronged effect like Mike is suggesting, which is maintaining and a bigger investment in facilities to match your academic programming?
I'll just add my 2 cents, Pat, and I would like to get your take too. But I don't care how we word this, and we don't have to solve this tonight. We can let you guys word it how. But I think the 2 main points are investment in our maintenance, just maintaining what we have, keep the lights on, and the investment in our academics and safety and academics.
And Andrea's here too. And so she's going to be, I'm sure, listening in and thinking how we can make sure that we address those. I think what we can do is, and we haven't heard from Pat yet, is take what you've said, make some adjustments and get them out to you so that you can then provide some further specific suggestions by December 14th, and you can act on a guiding change document at your next board meeting.
Steve or Pat, you want to jump in here?
Yeah, I don't know that I have a whole lot more to add than what everybody did. I guess it seems like we're getting hung up on the guiding change document, and I'm wondering why. There's probably a good reason why this all, why the 4 A, B, D, and C, or A, B, C, and D all need to be on the same document. Are there different documents? We have different priorities. So should there be different guiding change documents? I'm not a guiding change document expert, so I'll let you guys let me know, but we're getting hung up on a bunch of verbiage here, which is important, but is it clouding, is it clouding, muddying the waters?
And so this is, if I can add, my understanding is this is about your investment in your facilities from start to finish, from the maintenance that we've been talking about all the way up to what you've been talking about for a few years now, which is that you have a desire and an expectation to have your facilities be of the caliber that you expect to match the academic program and model that you want for your students. And so this guiding change document is intended to ask and then shape the parameters for how do you invest in facilities, everything from maintenance all the way up to that transformation that Vicki was talking about. So this is a long-term guiding change document. You can, if you wanted to, create a guiding change document for maintenance, one for safety, one for each bond or referendum that you have if you wanted to do that. The intention here was to say, what do you want your parameters to be around investing in facilities to match both the academic experience and to make sure that your roofs aren't leaking.
And I would just weigh in that why I see it as critical from a superintendent perspective is I think we were more informal on specifying the actual things that we were and the timelines that we were pursuing. And this is trying to help formalize that so that when you get into why is the high school currently not have the amenities of a football field, a track, and a baseball field, and we would like to have that, this would be the document to say, there's a lot of things that we need to accomplish. However, there is an order and there is a priority, and everything can't be weighted the same. Otherwise, we won't be able to accomplish that. And so that was some of the work that we did that tied into the strategic direction. So we had 5 strategic directions, and part of retaining staff, part of recruiting staff is making sure that they have a viable learning environment where we're not infested with wasps, or we don't have roofs that are leaking in the room, or I have the right equipment or the space to instruct in the current way, or I don't have to be fearful while I'm in the building. So I think that A through D is critical. I think it's critical for some districts have said, well, we could never get the academic portion unless there's some frosting or sugar about a football field. And I think that's important for us as a district to say, are they equal? Are they in some type of pecking order? And since there's limited finances in a district and within a community, how are we going to be able to go out and ask them if everything's of equal weight? And so that is why this is, I think, it looks simple, but it's really important, I think, and foundational for achieving over the next 5 years.
And using a guiding change document like this, it can provide a communication tool for you, for staff, for others to be sharing the same information, answering that why question, why are we doing this, and what are we hoping to achieve and in what order. It gives you that consistency across board members, across partners that may be working with you to say, why do you need any investment? Why are you going for a bond if you choose to do that eventually, whenever that's going to be, and how you're going to get there and what you are not going to consider as you move from the way things are now, which is that current context and reality, to your desired results. Ultimately, hopefully you will deliver on this, whether it's short-term or long-term. The idea here is more long-term, to say, what do we need as a district? What are we hoping for? And have the agreement across the board members so that you all have consistency in your sharing of information, in your messaging to the community, and you're clear. In many districts we hear, how come you didn't tell us that you needed these other things? You can be messaging all of these things right from the get-go and say, this is our ultimate need. But right now, if you choose to go with a shorter or a smaller ask, you can say, we're asking for what we think you can tolerate right now, but ultimately these are our needs as a district. And it's there, it's transparent, it's for everyone to see if you all agree that this is the direction you want to go. But this opens up the conversation. It gives you a chance to digest it, think through what you want in terms of that guiding change document. And then it can act as that communication tool for the rest of the organization as well, with whatever you decide to do to get to those desired results.
All right. And hopefully we can keep moving here, but I want to make sure we give everybody here. Does that make sense to everybody? Are we kind of on the same page? I know we got a lot of the how and the, you know, the order and all that stuff, but there's a lot to cover tonight. So is there anything before we move on that you want to make one comment on or a couple comments on?
So what we've got here, we're doing long-term. This is what we're seeing 2, 5, 10 years down the road. If we needed to be specific after we go through all of this and we realize, look, we're not going to be able to get all of this, then, as Steve suggested, then do we just come up with one for maintenance and the bare minimum that we have to have? We put another one out there if that's what we come to an agreement on?
You can certainly have both, and I would suggest, if you want that level of, that this is your long-term facilities guiding change document, and then if you make a decision on, we want a guiding change document specific to maintenance, you can create that as well, and that's sort of embedded as part of this overall long-term maintenance, facilities maintenance guiding change document. So
Okay.
this is intended to be that long-term investment. Keep your eyes on that long-term. And then along the way, if you decide that you want guiding change documents beyond what's here, you certainly can do that. That's your choice as a board and as an administrative team.
Okay.
All right, let's keep moving then, if we can.
Yep, and yeah, just before you said it, but I think just B, C, and D, I think by having that document, I think speaks to some of the things that Steve was talking about, and it ensures that there's clarity in the messaging. There's transparency, because again, we speak as one voice. There's different opinions, but as a board and you endorse it, it helps for pushing the message into our staff and up and out to our community.
Absolutely. And hopefully you'll land on a guiding change document and use the guiding change document. As I mentioned, there are many districts that we work with that will create multiple guiding change documents that relate to specific years even.
Okay. So I think that, as you can see, if we look at and ask for your input and engagement as a board, we would ask that suggestions and edits or clarifications could be given to Mike and I by the 14th, which is Monday, prior to our board meeting. We can get those revised, pushed out, and we would like to have kind of that discussion, and similar to kind of accepting, basically that is the blueprint of how we're going to organize both our time, energy, and the district office and Mike Hoyka's time as we move forward. We are definitely in a time where there's going to be, we're in a tough spot, and we knew we were in a tough spot with regards to our facilities and being able to maintain them, but also to be able to be competitive with the other districts around us. And so we've seen a lot of investments and upgrades to Hudson, into Ellsworth, River Falls. And so part of the things is trying to understand how we fit within that. Based on the information or the input from our community, based on the conversation, from a total tax burden of 16 to 22 million, I think we're faced with 3 questions. And that is, we delay any type of ask from our community until February or April 2022. And this will become more apparent when we get into the background information. But as a board, you're limited to specific times when you can go outside of our organization to ask for investments from the community. And so we want to make sure that there's a cost both in time, and there's a cost into pursuing that, but there's also a cost to not doing that. Meaning that there are some urgent things, as we said, the lifespan of the Malone Intermediate roof is leaking, and we've had experiences in our district of water infiltration and what that can mean. So the cost can go up by delaying. There's also the possibility of doing some type of partial two-part ask, and it would go back to a guiding change where we know that we have a long-term plan, but we're going to take one bite of the apple and ensure that the most pressing urgent needs are taken care of. And then we continue to engage the community about the other values and other expectations that you have or that you're advocating for our students and faculty. The other one was that we would still go all in with regards to what school perceptions and the different pathways that we had talked about. So if those are kind of the three questions that we're hanging on to, I just wanted to have all of you kind of get to why timing and the timelines matter. And so we are restricted this year. If we are going to pursue any amount of requests to our community by January 16th, we must, at the next board meeting, I think is it January 20th, we must have a referendum approved by the school board for an April 21 ask. If you decide not to pursue that, the next time that you could ask is all the way back into February of 2022. And does the Baird one come up when I open it? Okay, so currently where we're at is coming up on, if you want to have a question on the ballot on April 2021, we need to have that solidified in approved resolution by the date of our next board meeting. There is no November fall or general election. And so the next time we'd be able to go out and ask for any investment would put us out into February or April 2022. I also wanted to bring in Mike Hoyka. Mike, just in talking with you and regards to even talking with SDS recently, there, I think, has been a misnomer that if we were to ask in 2021 of April, that the work would happen in the summer of 2021. What's the feasibility of doing that, and why would that be a challenge?
Well, one, because of the cost of a large roof or any HVAC projects, the designing of them, having the documents for the RFPs to go out for bidding, you know, and then get a general contractor because of the size of the project online. That's a very tight window, you know, because we're almost to the, you know, we're only talking 6 months from when we want to start a roofing project. And a roofing project that large, you know, could take up to 45 days, you know, to 60 months, depending, or 60 days, 45 to 60 days, depending on the conditions and the weather. So with summer school in our buildings, unless we move the kids out, then we could maybe get an earlier starting time. But if you went to referendum and you really couldn't start engaging anybody to get ready for the bids and document and get all the documentations together until after April, you know. So you would have to go the summer of 22.
And when we talked with SDS, they kind of mirrored what Mike had shared, is that anytime you're asking, you're always adding 1 year to the date in which a referendum is approved to when the work actually gets done. And so part of this, I wanted to kind of make sure that both our community understands, but also the board understands, is that we've kind of been working on this since, you know, 2019. We knew where we were financially with regards to the more imminent needs. But now we're looking at 2022 of actually being able to do the work. If you delay, then we're looking at 2023. And so we have to kind of balance those types of things with then you get closer to some of the other roofs that are also coming due. And so the question is, do you then start to consolidate? And now a small ask is going to have to be a much bigger ask because you're going to have to compress some large ticket items at that time. The piece for Renee, I just wanted to ask you to come on with regards to kind of the timelines with regards to once a referendum is approved, how soon do we have to actually access bonds or purchase the sell the bonds, and then once the bonds are sold, how quickly the work has to be completed?
All right. So Rick, do you have that slide that you and I were talking about today? From the time that we ask for a referendum, we have, I think, gosh, 5 years to borrow the money, and then 3 years after we borrow to spend the money. So correct. When we talk about the roofs, because we have a roof in, well, the intermediate roof is the one that is leaking at this time. But we also have another roof. Is it Malone Elementary, Mike?
Yes, Malone Elementary is real close on the timeline to when, you know, if we look at intermediate school and roof expectancy is 30 years, we're going to hit that 19, you know, so it was done in 1995. So 2025, the roof has passed its life expectancy, and then they really start to deteriorate quickly. And if we look at Malone, those roofs are going to hit their life expectancy like 2026 to 2030. So it's like we're gonna fix one roof, and then 2 years later we're gonna go ask for more money again to do some more roofs.
So the
my
reason,
recommendation
I feel like we're skipping ahead, but the reason why I bring that up is you have 5 years from the date that you do the referendum to borrow. With the interest rates being low, Lisa Vossen recommended if we're going to ask for something now and then ask for something 2 years from now, you could borrow for both at the same, or go for the referendum at the same time, but put it out there that we're borrowing now for these two projects. This is their timeline. You borrow the money now, and then you have 3 years to spend it.
So essentially, you're saying if that was a pathway that we would choose and it actually worked, and we secured the bonds, we wouldn't have to. We could wait 2 years before replacing the roof at the intermediate.
At the
Malone,
elementary, at Malone. Yep. Yeah. So that is an option. I mean,
but the interest rates stay that would be locked in at the time we secured.
When we actually borrow it. Yep.
Okay.
So the board needs to think, okay, we don't want to keep going back every 2 years, knowing that we have 3 years to spend the money. If you know that there's big projects that are coming up in the next 3 years, you would ask for those projects all at the same time so that you aren't constantly going back to the public and they feel like, well, you just asked for this, you just asked for this, you just asked for this.
Yep, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. And
thanks.
So, and I think so.
Hey,
the main
Renee,
part.
how
Go
long
ahead.
do we have? So once a referendum is passed, how soon before we can gain access to the money?
Well, so if you pass a referendum, I think that it's usually within a couple months, because then they start the process. We have to go through, it's basically like refinancing. We have to go through all those same steps So Lisa would do their analysis. We'd have to do another bond rating, go through the Quarles and Brady and Baird. They go through basically like you're going to refinance, but it takes a little bit longer. So like a couple months.
Okay, so I mean, 2 months is ballparkish enough.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say 2 months to
And then
because they're
Renee?
gonna. It works a little bit different when we actually go for a bond versus a referendum. When we went for that energy efficiency one a couple of years back, there was a few extra steps in there that we had to do because they put the bonds out there for businesses to bid off of. So you have another step. So for our refinancing, it was like 2 months. So I think 2 months would be pushing it, just because we have those extra steps of the selling and the promoting of the bonds where they have to get information out to potential banks, basically, that are
So
invested.
basically, a 2-month kind of gap, 60 days from once that election occurs. But now let's look at the flip side of the coin. If you kind of know that there's a April 21st option to ask, then it falls to February of 2022 or April 2022. So another year, and then we already know that you have to add a year to do work.
Yeah.
So that's why that kind of that SDS study about kind of our first 3 years, then 4 to 6 become really relevant from that standpoint. The flip side is if we defer.
Rick,
Yep.
Just real quick, that's probably very wise thinking. I want to challenge that just a little bit. I don't know if there are pathways to have a referendum question in February and be construction ready by summer. It would require some spend probably on the design side, but you could get it project teed up, you could get it bid, you could get it designed. You're gonna spend some money there because you can't guarantee a referendum, but there is a way. You would not have to wait until 2023. I just want to
on the February one, right? And so those timelines will matter as we go forward. The flip side would be if we either delay completely or if we were unsuccessful. These are still needs. And so we still have to replace the roof. And so Renee, I would just like quickly kind of the 5 points of if we have to accomplish doing a roof that's 1.1, 1.2, we would need board direction on where that money would come from. And what are some of the implications of where are the levers that the board would have in order to cover that cost?
So our options in that would be the board would approve to use fund balance, or we could short-term borrow, but our short-term borrowing is a max of $1 million. So even if you short-term borrow the $1 million, that's not going to get us one roof. We're still it'll be basically a twofold. You're going to tap into your fund balance and you're going to short-term borrow and hope that we have a good year at the state. I mean,
Renee,
yes.
we also have, is it Fund 32 or something like that? And I know there's
Fund 46.
Yeah, are you including that in the fund balance or?
I am not, because we can't touch that until August 2022.
Okay.
Right.
So
Renee,
I'm not including that right now.
Okay.
Renee, what's the interest rates on short-term loans?
Well, short-term right now I was quoted at 4.25, and just because the regular interest rates are low, for some reason, those aren't going lower. So right now they're at 4.25.
And bond rates are at what?
No, I think our one is below 2%.
Okay. So some of the things, the levers that we would have is a fund balance could be used. It would still require some short-term borrowing. The interest rate would be higher. We do run the risk in that we currently have been able to avoid short-term borrowing because we have a high fund balance, and we short-term borrow to pay our employees previously. Is there a risk of having our fund balance go down, especially in unknown economic times? Usually we get our December load. And how is that for this year?
We didn't get our December load yet. Our December load is usually deposited today, and that has not been deposited yet. That is a $2 million deposit. So I have been tapping into our savings quite a bit lately, just to do payroll. We spend over $1 million a month in just payroll expenses between payroll, taxes, insurance, all of that. So,
and what happens to our bond rating if our fund balance or we short-term borrow?
Oh, short-term borrowing and lower fund balance does affect our bond rating. So that would hurt us in the long run. We're at the point, did Lisa say that we are kind of in the middle of, or at the lower end of are we at the AA3?
We're at AA3. We're in the middle of the pack, but the Moody report did say that our fund balance and lack of, or currently because we don't short-term borrow, are in our positives. If either of those change, our AA3 is on shaky ground. And the reason that matters is then your ability to get prime interest rates on a bond evaporates. And so we've been in a good position to get cheaper bonds, and that means you can go further on your projects.
Also, when you look at your bond rating, just to put it kind of in simpler terms, it's kind of like your credit score. So if we short-term borrow, you know how things affect your credit negatively, it goes down really fast, but it takes a while to build that back up. So we don't want to extremely reduce our fund balance. And I know that when you look at our June 30th fund balance, it may look high, but that has to get us through till January, until we get our December payment. So if you look as of today, you look at our accounts, we have $1.8 million less than what we had a year ago. So it makes me a little uneasy, knowing that what if next year or the following year they delay all of our payments, then at what point, if we're borrowing to put a roof on, then we don't have the ability to borrow to cover payroll expenses like we've had to in the past. So if we're utilizing that safe net of the short-term borrowing to put a roof on, then we don't have that safety net to help us out if our state payments don't come in. Or if they, like the county had the ability this year to defer paying us our taxes that we were owed. They could have waited, and they had up to 2 to 3 months that they could have delayed our payment. That would have extremely hurt us.
Thank you. So you can see, obviously we have options, we have safety nets, but we can't use the same safety net for payroll and also for maintenance or facilities. So those are going to be some of the tough that we have to kind of navigate over the.
One more question.
Yeah.
One more question. Just I'm going to beat this one. Sorry, Renee. So Fund 46 money is available August of 22. Is that correct?
The
Yeah.
majority of it is. So every time we add money to is a separate CD. So then, I'll take out a CD for 25,000. So each one of them, I've tried to like strategically place them right around that August 2022 date. Some of them, like we have one that's maturing actually next week. So I've been working with the bank to roll that into a new one that will come due right around that time. So most of them are July. Well, we can't, even if they mature in July, we can't touch it till August 22, but some of them are now like September or October 2022, just because I can't take out an oddball CD.
Sure.
So I think the longest out that I have right now is October of 2022, but I think it might be a small CD.
Okay, and just to exhaust all kind of options here, if we did decide to short-term borrow or to pull from the fund balance to in part cover a roof, could we then replace that money with our funds from 46?
Ooh, I would have to research that one. I mean, I think
Okay.
I know that we can add to Fund 46 at any point, but I don't know if there's a date. I guess Rick will have to. I'll have to check with DPI when we start drawing from it. I don't know if we can keep putting money back into it. So,
Okay.
I would have to check with DPI. I can make a note on that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So you can kind of see both sides of the coin. Now, as we go, we didn't want to go too far into this because I think just kind of the fact you guys have seen the SDS reports, you kind of know the 1 and 3 and 4 to 6 year aspect with regards to the 10-year plan and some of Mike Hoyka's list. I think the main thing that we wanted to talk about is kind of as we shift to kind of what the action plan is and answering the 3 questions, whether or not we delay and defer, if you want to ask just for the most urgent needs or go all in. We can talk about what information would you need, because this isn't a decision-making meeting. It would be at the either December or January point where you make a decision, is what information might you need from Mike and myself and Renee. So as we kind of transition to that, I think the action plan was to kind of come back to, for the board to start to think about what does April 2021 mean for us, understanding that we have urgent needs and we have additional needs. And we know that there is not the engagement and clarity in that for April 2021. And so if we kind of cycle back to the questions and purpose of tonight is to kind of give a leaning to what the board is thinking based on kind of the intersection between the SDS reports and the work Mike has provided you and the input from our community to date.
So Rick, you're kind of muffling on us right now. You're kind of going in and out with I don't know as you're moving around, but just to kind of a heads up. One thing I think, with obviously there's 3 options here. The number 2 partial 2-part ask, we need to understand what that even means and what you're talking about, like money, what's it going to, what is it truly covering?
And I think the piece and how I would frame that one would be that we understand that there was not a commitment for a significant ask at 16 million, right? However, we know that I've asked Mike Hoyka to kind of pull together a spreadsheet of the most urgent kind of 12-month costs that we have to invest that go beyond his regular budget. And I think that what we would need to share with you is that that does not come near kind of the 10 to 14 million that infrastructure costs that SDS had predicted for that 4 to 6 year period. But I think that we have to come back to that guiding change to say, what is the order of your priorities? And are we going to invest in, let's say, some icing or a football field or a track prior to getting the maintenance stuff done? So it's kind of saying, here's the order. We would be providing, I would say that if you ask me as a superintendent to give you guidance, I think I would say being all in, despite the feedback from our community, is not the question we should be pursuing. I do think there are pros and cons of delay and defer, but it is still a high risk roadmap if you take that. And then the partial a two-part ask would be, we come to you with kind of what I would say is the base package of what we see as the most urgent things that need to be covered over the next 12 months with option 1, 2, and 3. And those would be kind of like how you trim out a car. So you got the base model, and then here are some of the things. And for example, I just want to have Mike Hoyka speak to this. One of the challenges we've had sometimes is that we've never finished projects. So like for the HVAC over at Malone Elementary, when we did the energy efficiency, we did not do the whole building. And when we look at MIS with the roof, we also know that middle school and Malone roofs are going to be coming due in the next 5 years. So one of the questions Mike has for you guys is, Mike, do you want to kind of talk about whether or not we combine them all at once or keep them staggered, and what's the impact both for you and then also for the board in when it would have to ask again?
I guess the main thing, because being they're all so close within the 5 years, that if we go and we ask for all of them, and being there's some timeline there to use the money that we borrow it, so we don't have to do all the roofs right away, but we borrow all the money for all the roofs that have to be done in the next 5 years. And one thing to remember, all these roofs are hitting, we're not replacing any of them ahead of time. They're all going to be within their the end of their life expectancy. So, and once we get past the life expectancy, the roofs deteriorate greatly. And what that's going to do is it's going to add more cost to maintain, just to try and maintain them to keep them from leaking. So, for example, like the intermediate school, this year we're probably going to budget anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 just to replace or repair some of the water leaks that we have right now until we get the roof completely replaced. So if we don't do it next year, we'll probably have to do another 10, 15,000. And then the next year, another 10, 15,000. And before long, you got 50, 60,000 extra spent on a roof that you're going to replace within the next 5 years. So the more we push it down the road, it's just going to cost us more. One, a lot of these prices we're looking at are kind of based off of in 18 and 19, and we did a little increase in 2020 here on some of those prices. But we know as we go down the run, the cost is just going to keep going up on these. So just keep pushing it down the road. We're just going to wait and we're going to commit to it in 5 years. It's going to add substantially to the cost of it.
So Mike, I am looking at the document that it looks like you put together. That's kind of those essential needs, and I'm assuming that it's at the end of our agenda here, and I think that's probably. I think it's maybe labeled urgent needs. So I'm guessing those are kind of what you guys have anticipated ours. These are the musts in the next 1 to 3 years. And I'm comparing that to the SDS information that they gave to us. And there's a difference in numbers. And I was just trying to understand that a little bit because it's about a $350,000 difference. Is that rolling in? What's rolling in there differently? Because it's, the SDS was a 3.4 kind of requirement or ask for the first 1 to 3 years, and then the one you have is a 3.8.
it could be what we added in there that we thought.
Okay.
You're looking at the linking to long range plan. Is that the one you're looking at?
At the very end of our agenda there, I'd have to go back. SDS summary, urgent infrastructure needs. Is that what you're using to kind of help guide if we did that two-part ask?
Yes, I'm using some of that, and then I'm also using our 10-year facility plan and worksheets that we have developed, and that we use ASHRAE as for our life expectancies. So there could be some, we might have added more stuff into there than what they had, like for the roofs. We're probably adding in the middle school, if you will, on that one sheet where they're probably leaving it out yet. So, and that could be where the difference is. I'm not sure what sheet you're exactly looking at.
I'm looking at, go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, so I think the main objective here would be to probably put in context based on what the initial survey was about, and that it was both infrastructure and kind of the transformation of the buildings to match the academic model and grade configuration. At this point, we know that we can't do that. And so I think that we would be really looking at just maintenance that we know are beyond life expectancy. Right now, it comes somewhere between, remember, the roof in and of itself is 1.1. And then depending on what package we put with it, whether or not you combine two roofs because they're all within the same window, and therefore you only have to ask once and you're not asking every 3 years. We're looking somewhere in the neighborhood of 2.5 as being the maximum ask at this time. But we know if we asked in April for 2.5 or less, somewhere between 1.8 and 2.5, all of us in this room and our community know that that is well below what we're going to need in the next 4 to 6 years. But we don't really have, I think, the ability to clearly engage our community about that. But I think it can get us to April 22 or February 22 or April 22. And that's why I said it's kind of a two-part ask, is that there's no way we can ask for it all now. And I think the comments even said in these unprecedented times economically, just ask for what you exactly need. And I think we can lay that out for you and bring that to you on the 16th. And then you can help kind of put that package together. And obviously there's a risk because there are some things that could go wrong in between, but then you would have to help us know if it comes out of our budget or if it comes out of fund balance or both. Because then Renee and I have to kind of obviously change how we're setting up for next year.
So there's just a lot of documents out there, I guess. And so while we're looking and thinking ahead for the next school board meeting, you would suggest looking at that long range plan, which is in our agenda here, versus instead of the SDS plan or the one that's at the very bottom of our agenda. They're two different plans, but look at that range one. Yeah. Okay. And that's kind of basically the pared down 1 to 3 year ask to kind of get us by through this summer, planning for implementation the following summer, basically. And then if we looked at a two-prong ask.
Yeah. And is the spreadsheet coming up now?
I have it put up on my computer, but yeah, I can see it on yours too. Okay. I was looking at the other one that's also on our agenda, but I have this one. Yeah. Yeah.
So basically this would be what we would say is a way of line 43 is kind of that 1.1 required for the roof. And then we know that there's some things like the middle school roof or the elementary roof. We know that there's some HVAC stuff, and then there's some other maintenance. And I've asked Mike to kind of rank order those 1 to 3 in risk value. If you put it all together, it comes to about 2.8. Now, that's what I think we could come and lay it out. Again, with the amount of time that we had, we weren't able to make it look pretty and maybe as clear as you would want. But I think we wanted to make sure that you understood we wouldn't be coming back with a $10 million right package, but this is really bare bones in order to keep us afloat and to make sure that there isn't significant deterioration of our facilities while we then continue to outline the long term.
Yeah, this is really helpful to see. And yeah, I appreciate this.
Yeah, and I guess one thing with On is, it's a starting tool to kind of look and evaluate things. And, we can go in and fine tune this more and reevaluate some more stuff. So, we might take some items off, add something else, but, we're probably going to be in that 2.5
Yeah.
range.
Yeah. And these look like the necessities. It's already the pared down from the SDS. So,
yes.
Okay.
Right. And I think this is where, as Mike said, we can probably redline a couple things, but for everything we redline, there's going to be something that surprises us. This year we've had a break in the water main over at the middle school where we had a shutter for a day. MIS had some pipes that broke, and then over the weekend we lost our $10,000 hot water tank over at Malone Elementary. So those are things that happen, but it's one of those things that I think we know that there's essential urgent needs. We can kind of give you this base package and decide, again, is April 21 feasible to come and ask to make sure that we have the money in hand to make sure that we maintain the buildings, and then continue to refine the guiding change and what, if any, additional ask might be required in 2022. So I think that, kind of looking at the clock, I know that we're kind of coming up, and we try to keep these maxed at 2 hours. I think what would be helpful is kind of getting a sense of what the board might be leaning toward with regards to the 3 questions from section 3 and whether or not there's a 4th option. And then what you would like Renee, Mike, and I to provide you so that as you have that discourse and aim for a decision either on the 16th of December or in January, you have what you need and understand what the consequences of the decisions would be as well.
So next steps here, Rick, do you want to open it up and talk through these this option 2 now, or what are you looking for from us tonight?
Yeah, I think, just, to kind of clarify, if, we'll take them in maybe reverse order. Does anybody believe, that we would try to go after all in and do, regardless of what the results said?
Can we just do a show of hands for anybody that wants to do that thinks we should still do item 3 all in?
Is this separate from voting? It feels like we're voting here, you guys.
No, we're not voting.
I mean, can I just say what I'm feeling and we just go around without doing hands? Because
I'm just joking around here. So I think I know what everybody's answer is. So go ahead, Tanya.
Well, I'm leaning towards the 2-part ask. I feel like I've always been leaning towards the 2-part ask. This is tough times. The community spoke to us. I read through our guiding change document and everything. And one of those parts is one of the 3rd things is making sure that we're listening to our community and we're engaging. I can't remember, I'm pulling up the exact words. Make decisions that are we will not make decisions that are likely to create mistrust with our community. And I feel like when we ask them information, they're trusting us to use that information and be, a steward of that information. And so I'm leaning towards a 2-part ask. I think there's things that we absolutely have to do. We cannot have a leaky building. Things will just get worse. but I'm not really interested in the whole thing right now. And I'm not even sure where I am down the road. If I were to think about a 10-year plan, I feel like there's a lot up in the air and there's a lot more thinking on that yet. So that's where I am.
All right, who wants to go next? I'm just going to start calling people. Pat.
Similar. I'm not interested in the all-in. We absolutely have to ask for some maintenance money very soon. I don't know that I'm in on the partial two-part ask though either. I'm not convinced that we can't wait until February and still have money available for projects in summer of 2022. If we ask this April, we will not be able to do the work till summer of 2022 anyway. I'm sensitive to the pandemic. We heard from the community they're not interested in money, and I think that even a $2.8 million ask or whatever it is going to take some pulling together of, we'll call it a committee, we'll call it a focus group, we'll call it whatever we want to do, but I think we need to have some community participation and help guide some direction.
Vicky?
So my
or Pat?
wishy-washy
Go ahead.
Yep. My wishy-washy is delay and defer until February, not April, but February.
Vicky, how about you?
Yeah, no, the all in, I don't think is a good idea. Yeah, I agree. There's the things we need to ask for specifically. Yeah, this is my first go around with this, so I'm not exactly sure. I mean, it makes sense. Some of it does, to get all the money we need for the roofs right away, because we know that has to happen. And with interest rates being where they are, that would be helpful. I'm certainly, I mean, the using of the funds that we have and short-term borrowing, I don't like the idea of any of that. I think it just negatively impacts the district's ability later on if we really need a referendum for something bigger. But yeah, I guess the maintenance stuff, if that's all we're able to ask for now, I think that's what we have to ask for, and then work on something else down the line for what we need next.
Okay. Steve, how about you?
Well, we're kind of jammed up on a timeline, obviously. And
For the meeting or for, no, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Well, no, for the district, but I mean, we have good question though. Going to referendum, just imagine that, right? Going to referendum in 2021 and then going back in 2022, I think would be a disaster. Especially if the 2021 was a need-based referendum and 2022 was an essential or a request, or however you want it. So you kind of have to look at one, but I really think that word need is important. We're not going to get everything we want. It's just not going to happen. I mean, you saw the survey from the community. We all read it. I mean, this community right now, today, based on any number of things, is just not going to support that. And quite honestly, I don't blame them. We've got some good facilities, granted, we've got needs. So let's focus on the needs and let's do a referendum for our needs, however we want to determine. And I'm not talking just next year. They can be 5-year, 6 or 8 year needs for buildings. But, I think we have to also evaluate our priorities. I mean, how important is safety today versus where it was a year ago? When's the last time somebody said anything about safety besides this group? So is it still a priority? I don't know, but I would definitely lean towards number one as well.
Okay. I want to explore number one a little bit more as well, this delay and defer, and understand if we were to go in February and be able to pull off a construction project starting in that summer of 2022, what does it mean for 2021? what does that look like for us? Because I think one of my bigger concerns is if we push it off until February and we can get it done in 2022, I think that to me feels like a I don't know if I want to call it a safer approach, but I worry to some folks' point on the call here. If we try to go out in April and get a referendum on the table, it feels like we're grasping at straws to try to get something out there to get people to vote on. And maybe we have to because we're in that position. But I think if we're not in that position, can we limp along here in 2021 without dipping into the fund balance where it would impact the Moody's rating? The Moody's rating is really where I stand. If we're going to be drawing short term and we're going to be dipping into the fund balance for $500,000 to make ends meet, just to get to February of 2022, then I think we're making the wrong decision. Because if our Moody's rating drops, then we're killing our credit score. If we can maintain what we have, and if we got to spend $20,000 to keep the roof from leaking at the beginning of the next school year, whatever we got to do, but and somehow bake it into the budget a little bit, and get us by, just limp by until that February 2022, and February 2022 comes around. Can we start that project in that, because that's a big piece, is being able to start in 2022, the summer, for that roof job, I think is critical. If we have to delay it another year and go February 2023, then I don't, that's a factor in that decision as well for delay and defer. I lean towards that as well, because the survey was pretty loud and clear, and we missed the boat on the survey. I really do. I feel like we missed an opportunity to ask for what we needed. We looked at it from a long range perspective and threw out some pretty big numbers, and the public spoke and told us they're not interested in supporting a referendum, at least for that money, that size of a referendum. So now we're looking at we're in a position where we have some real needs. It's the number's a lot less, so we're not sure of how much the public is going to support. And I think if we can buy ourselves some time and put something together over this next year to educate the community, this could turn into a February referendum in 2022, where maybe it becomes a two-part. Maybe it's, here's our needs, and here's a little bit more that we're looking for security. We could frame it up that way. There's a lot more options if we can defer for a year and frame it up a little bit more so the public can understand, give the public a chance to understand and help us frame that up over the next year as well. So I'm not a big fan of trying to throw something out in April of next year and just hoping it passes, because that's where we're at right now. We got to come up with a decision here in less than 2 months. And I think that's, if we can somehow limp along through next year, I think that might be a better option, in my opinion.
Hey, Mike, how likely are we able to limp along next year without having to do some of the borrowing and stuff, like roof wise? Can we get through? I mean, this is talking 2 winters.
Yeah. As far as the roof, we do. I'll put it this way. 3 years from now, if we don't have a roof on, then I will be very concerned for the intermediate school. Right now, if we do some repair maintenance to extend the life of it, and we went to a February 2022 referendum, so it could be done in that summer, would fit more. We would not be rushed. We would have time to put it out for good bids and items like that. So
there's also some other things on that list though that need to get covered next year. And I look at the track, the track surface needs to be resurfaced. Otherwise we can't even run track on it. So that's something that's going to have to happen.
Yeah. And that we're budgeting for within our maintenance budget this year. The track has to be, we were planning on doing it last year, but we did some maintenance work to extend it one more year. So it has to be done this summer. So that will be one of the things. When I was putting together the 2021 summer projects list, that is definitely one of them on there. There's some other things we need to discuss, like backup generators. Do we want to wait and put it on with the referendum project? There's some stuff there we can maybe do with some of those other urgent needs, but the track is definitely one of them that we're budgeting to do this year.
So the drawback, though, and I want to finish my point on the delay and defer. The drawback of waiting until February is if we can't get something passed, we're really kicking the can down the road now, and we got to wait until the next opportunity to go for a referendum. We got to figure out what the public's even going to support, because if we can't get them to support even the bare minimum, then we got some issues on our end, and we got to figure out how to get our message out. But if we can't do that in a year, then we're doing something else wrong.
Yeah, I feel. Go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to say, if something didn't pass in February of 2022, maybe we figure out what we didn't educate the public on and went in April 2022.
I don't even know if that's possible.
Huh?
I don't think that's even possible, because we'd have to have it within, well, yeah, maybe it is. I don't want to say it's not, because it might be, but that even, yeah.
Yeah, so to that point, legally you can ask, you're limited to 2 questions per calendar year. So if you do defer, you are able to ask in February, currently under the law, if nothing changes, you could come back in April of 2022. But you wouldn't be able to come back in a spring.
What about November of 2022?
You only get to ask twice.
But it could go from February to November?
Yes.
Okay.
But you can only ask 2 questions, right? Like that means if we ask 2 questions in February, we can't do anything in April?
Or November?
No, yeah. So those are kind of gray areas. And so there's different interpretations, but you can basically if you ask now, there isn't really another election in 2021. If you ask in 2022, you're only allowed 2 events, 2 voting windows to kind of ask a question, and that question can have multiple parts.
Okay. Gotcha. So we can add 2. We could ask 2 questions in February and then come back in November and ask 2 more or something else.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
But and there's some technicalities in that, but you would still basically think of them as events, and you always have 2 events within a calendar year that you can ask your community for support. What I'm taking away from this is that there's kind of consensus, and obviously I even played my hand, is that obviously I think we want to make sure, and I liked how Tanya referred back to kind of the guiding change of, we want to make sure that we're engaging our community, we listen to our community. I think the information that you have now, we would like to bring forward to you in the way that Mike Hoyka has kind of said, here's the bare bones, here are some things that are what we thought were urgent within 12 months. The 2s and 3s are things that will have to be done probably within a very short period of time. I think that gives you the opportunity. I heard some things about one thing that we might add to the guiding change of the results that we want is, if we delay and defer, or if we even ask for partial, we need to balance the needs that it doesn't impact our Moody rating or we don't want to short-term borrow or dip significantly into the fund balance. That those would be things that we want to try to avoid. And so that would be something that we can put forward to you and have that dialogue, and we can lay it out as kind of what are the impact or consequences, and what are some of the high risk investments that Mike is looking at, and what goes beyond his current budget, so that you know whether or not we have to crimp our budget, tighten it, or cut back on some of the projects.
Yeah, Rick, I think that's one thing we have not talked about tonight, is not just borrowing into the general fund, but I'm going to throw it out there because it should be an option, but is there programming are other things that we need to look at to make ends meet, to cover the costs of anything that pops up. So I don't think we need to have that, decided, but I don't want to just say that we're just going to raid the fund balance just, without thinking about that.
Right. And I think that's why Renee and I, we kind of bring that up, is that we just need to kind of know where you would direct us. Is it in our crafting of the 21-22 budget? Is it crafting the 21-22 budget and fund balance? And, so there's many pieces of the puzzle. You are well informed of that. We'll try to bring that information and timelines for you, have it available for you, and maybe lay out the pros and cons of, either whether or not it's a partial. I heard also, if we ask for a partial ask, is it just a one part, or are we doing a one part and following up a following year? And that has a benefit and also a risk, of saying, wait a minute, you just came to us. So that would be about clarity of message and the engagement of the board with the community. So is there anything else as we kind of come up against our 2-hour limit with regards to anything else you would need from Mike or Renee or myself for the 16th?
And so just to clarify, the 16th would be on the agenda as a discussion item? Or are you asking us to make a decision? Because I guess I'll just say I'm concerned about making a decision when the last one we talked about, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if, yeah. And I get that there's some timelines there, but.
Yeah, the major timeline is you would have to make a final decision if you want to go forward in April, is at the January board meeting.
So could that be the decision that we make at the board meeting? Yes or no, we're going to go for the referendum this year or in this spring, and just leave it at that. And then if we decide no, then we can come back and have more discussion about the following year or whatever. Does that make sense?
So if you don't come to a conclusion on a resolution by January, then by default we'll be looking at, when would the next opportunity would be February of 2022.
I know. I'm just saying, when we make a decision, it sounds like we need to make a decision because we would miss a deadline.
So Tanya, what we can do is this coming month, December, we're going to have information and discussion on this item. I don't think there's anything to vote on yet because we don't need to vote until January. So we can talk about it and give Rick and the administration direction. If we think, oh yeah, I think we do want to go for number 2 there, partial ask in April, then we drop a resolution. We'd have to come back in January and vote on a resolution.
Perfect.
And if we're kind of on the fence, we need to have another meeting in there somewhere, then we'll do that too. But I think December we'll just do information discussion. Rick's kind of got what he's got I think we gave you what you needed tonight. Do you feel?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I probably will want to maybe touch base with you and Steve just to make sure that we can, I think even to Tanya's point, we have so much information, and now I think we got to boil it down to what's a way that we can interpret it and clearly define what our next steps are. And if we defer, we also have to be really clear what that means. And I think and why we're going to defer when we know that there's some upcoming high risk issues, but then what that might mean for 2022.
Yeah. And just, again, I just want to recap this because this is an important, it literally would sway my decision on doing a delay defer or doing a partial ask in April 2021, is understanding what that looks like next year. And if we delay and defer, are we going to mess with our fund balance too much where it's going to screw up our Moody rating?
Or do we have to cut too many programs?
Right. Are we exactly?
Yep. And that's, I think, in that pro con. So that's why I think if Steve and Mike, if Renee and I can, with Mike's help, kind of give you things to respond between now and the 16th. Are we framing it in a way that makes sense for the rest of the board members? I think that'd be helpful.
Does anybody else have anything else to add about as far as like what would be a deal breaker to a delay and defer? Besides, and I guess the other deal breaker for me would be if we come up with a conclusion that we can't put a roof on in February of 2022 or in the summer of 2022 if we wait till February. I think that would also possibly change my mind and want to ask a question in April possibly. For me, that's for my personal opinion. I don't know if anybody else would agree with that or not, but if anybody else has any suggestions or just deal breaker type stuff that would say I want to, I would rather pursue something in April of 2021.
I would agree. For me, that'd be a deal breaker. Like I said, I think even if we thought February wasn't enough time, I think there's other levers to pull there. But like I said, it would cost some money. But I think that's worth, I don't know who would do it. I can help, whatever, some sniffing around to make sure that we're that our assumptions are correct there.
Okay. I think also just in closing, we did put a couple of the slides from the community survey. I think there's some things that if you look at slide 20 and 32, as the initial question is on slide 20, then that's before there was any tax tolerance made. Once you got to slide 32, there was, just pull this up here. This is basically how it started out with regards to supporting or not supporting before there was any information on tax tolerance. I think that what happened by the end is that this 62 by the community did drop to 54%. So it did move in the direction with some clear information. Obviously not far enough that would give us any confidence that we should be pursuing that level in April or any short period of time. I also wanted to point out that when you break out just the information of who would support overall or not support, we do know that I would not support overall is at 32%. But of people that would support a smaller referendum all the way up to 22 does come in about at above 50%. So there is a gap between some, support with regards to committing toward investing in the buildings and facilities. So, I think that there is some positive news there. I think that we got, and I'll share out the comments that just arrived and you guys had asked to be able to see those. And I think that'll help us kind of frame our discussion on the 16th. And then if you decide there might be a price point that you're looking at for April, we would have to, again, just finalize that at the January board meeting. If not, we'll be continuing to pursue what we need to do for February or April of 2022.
All right. Does anybody else have anything that we forgot that's on your mind right now before we move on? I think we had a good discussion tonight. This was very helpful. All right. Rick, was there anything else that we have to cover here before we move on?
Not from my side.
All right. Then I'm going to move up to the next one, which is, I guess we're going to resume Robert's Rules of Order. We'll need a motion for that.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And we are